My grandma's new hobby is uncovering family secrets, and it's getting out of hand. Title: My grandma's new hobby is uncovering family secrets. And it's getting out of hand part 1, discovering the secret. So, I'm not sure how to start this. But I guess it all started about 6 months ago when my grandma, who's in her late 70s, picked up a new hobby. At first, it seemed harmless enough she decided to start researching our family's genealogy. You know, typical stuff, ancestry websites, old family photos, that kind of thing. I thought it was sweet. She'd call me every so often to tell me about some distant relative we had, who was apparently a famous war hero. Or how my great-great-grandfather had once won a local pie-eating contest. We're a fun bunch. But then, a couple of months ago, things started to get a little weird. It all started when she stumbled upon a stack of old letters in my aunt's attic. They were written in the 1940s and addressed to my great-grandmother, but the return address was for a man named Richard Holloway. My grandma didn't recognize the name at all. She mentioned it to my aunt, who seemed super nervous about it and told her it was nothing and that she shouldn't worry about it. But of course, that only made my grandma even more determined to find out who Richard Holloway was. Now, here's where it gets complicated. After a few days of digging through old family documents and making calls to distant relatives, she came across something that made her pause. A birth certificate for a child named Evelyn Holloway, born in 1944. According to the certificate, the child was the daughter of my great-grandmother and a man named Richard Holloway. That's when the floodgates opened. My grandma was immediately obsessed. She told everyone, my aunt, my mom, even me, that she had discovered a hidden family secret. Apparently, my great-grandmother had a child out of wedlock, and that child had been quietly erased from family history. No one had ever talked about her. My great-grandmother had apparently never mentioned the baby, and my grandmother said she had never heard of any Evelyn Holloway. I honestly didn't know what to think at first. It sounded like something straight out of a soap opera, but my grandma insisted it was true. She started pestering family members, asking if they knew anything about Evelyn, and most of them clammed up or gave vague answers, which only fueled her suspicions. But then, something even stranger happened. A few days ago, my grandma got a letter in the mail, and it was addressed to her. The envelope had no return address, and the handwriting was unfamiliar. She opened it up, and it was from someone claiming to be the granddaughter of Evelyn Holloway. According to the letter, Evelyn had grown up in another state and had passed away years ago. But her family had been looking for any remaining relatives. The letter contained a phone number, and my grandma was beside herself with excitement. And that's where things have really started to spiral out of control. Now, my grandma has become obsessed with calling this number. She's done it multiple times in the last 48 hours, and she's convinced that the family of Evelyn Holloway is out there waiting to meet us. But every time she calls, no one picks up, and the voicemail is full. She's starting to tell people that our family has a secret other side that we don't know about, and that we might have long-lost relatives out there who are just waiting to meet us. Honestly, I'm getting a little worried. My grandma is acting more and more like she's on the verge of uncovering some huge conspiracy, and she's dragging everyone into it. Even my mom, who's normally pretty grounded, is getting sucked in. To make things worse, my grandma's been dropping hints to anyone who'll listen about this mysterious Holloway connection. And it's getting to the point where my aunt won't even return her calls. People are starting to get uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. I get that uncovering family secrets is exciting, but it's starting to feel like my grandma's obsession is taking over her life and ours. I'm not sure if we're going to have a big family reunion with this unknown Holloway family, or if we're just going to keep unraveling something we might not want to know. But one thing is for sure, things are about to get much, much weirder. To be continued. Part 2. Okay, so I've got to update you on how things have been escalating since my last post. I honestly didn't expect my grandma's obsession with uncovering our family's hidden history to spiral this fast, but here we are. I'll try to keep this brief, but you have to know the situation is getting a little out of hand. First, the phone call. A day after I posted my first update, my grandma finally got through to someone on that mysterious number, the one from the letter she received from the granddaughter of Evelyn Holloway. She was absolutely ecstatic. I was there when she took the call, and I could see the joy on her face when she picked up, all ready to finally uncover the truth. But the conversation didn't go quite as expected. From what I could gather, the person on the other end of the line seemed to be just as shocked to hear from her as my grandma was to talk to them. There was a lot of awkward silence on the call, but then the woman who introduced herself as Lydia Holloway did confirm that she was the granddaughter of Evelyn. Lydia said that she had been trying to track down the family for years, but no one in her family had known where the other side had gone. It all seemed too good to be true. They exchanged some basic details about Evelyn and her life, and Lydia confirmed that Evelyn had been raised in a foster home after being taken away from my great-grandmother when she was a baby. This is where things started to get a little weird. According to Lydia, Evelyn had spent most of her life in secrecy, with little to no contact with the family. She apparently found out about her biological family much later in life, but by then, most of them had passed away. However, Lydia was adamant that Evelyn had always wanted to reach out, and that's why she had written all those letters to my great-grandmother. I don't know about you, but something doesn't sit right with me. It feels like we're missing a lot of pieces here. But my grandma didn't care. She was thrilled by this new connection, and immediately started talking about setting up a family reunion. Then things took a dark turn. Here's where it gets even weirder. A few days after the phone call, Lydia sent my grandma a few old family photographs and a short biography of Evelyn's life. Among them was a picture of a woman who looked almost exactly like my great-grandmother, but in a way that was just off. The woman in the photo was much younger, and I could see some eerie resemblance to my mom and aunt, which freaked me out. There was also a letter tucked inside the envelope, written in my great-grandmother's handwriting. The letter didn't just contain a family update, though. It contained something much darker. It mentioned a family betrayal and referred to the secret Evelyn had carried with her all her life. My grandma was fixated on the words betrayal and secret. She started asking all sorts of questions about the letter who had my great-grandmother betrayed. What was this secret? At first, it felt like it was just a coincidence. But after seeing how my grandma started acting, I began to worry. She started accusing my mom of hiding things from her, and even tried to confront my aunt about it. Things were getting tense. The final straw. Last weekend, my grandma took things a step too far. She invited Lydia Holloway to come visit us without even consulting anyone else in the family. She was convinced that Lydia was the key to uncovering the truth, that she'd already made plans to meet her in person. She told us that Lydia was coming to town and that we should all be ready to welcome her into the family. I know I should have said something then, but I was so overwhelmed by the whole situation that I didn't know what to do. I tried to ask my grandma why she didn't want to get more details before meeting Lydia, but she just brushed me off and insisted that everything would be fine. The worst part? Lydia didn't show up. Instead, we received a letter from her, postmarked from the same city. The letter was almost apologetic, but it also mentioned that Lydia had made a mistake and that she shouldn't have gotten my grandma's hopes up. Apparently, she was just doing her own research and didn't mean to cause so much confusion. My grandma was heartbroken, but even more concerning, she became obsessed. She started accusing my mom and aunt of lying about Evelyn and the family's past, claiming that they knew things they weren't telling her. She's started to believe that someone is deliberately keeping her from the truth. I'm genuinely concerned now. My grandma is starting to isolate herself from the rest of the family. She's getting more secretive and paranoid, spending hours on the phone with people who don't even know if they're part of the family. She's convinced there's some massive conspiracy she's unraveling. And every time someone tells her to stop, she just digs in deeper. I'm not sure how to stop this from going further. Every time I try to talk to her about it, she brushes me off, telling me I don't understand. But I'm starting to feel like we're heading into dangerous territory both emotionally and mentally. I'm worried about what this obsession is doing to her. At this point, I don't even know if there is a real secret or if it's all just a figment of my grandma's imagination. But it feels like we're on the edge of something that could tear the family apart. If anyone has dealt with something like this before, please let me know what to do. I'm just stuck. To be continued. Title: My Grandma's New Hobby is Uncovering Family Secrets. And It's Getting Out of Hand Part 3, Resolving the Conflict. So, it's been a couple of weeks since my last update, and I feel like I owe it to everyone to finally share what happened after everything went so sideways. I've been sitting on this for a while because I wasn't sure how things were going to play out. But it seems like the situation is finally starting to come to a head. Let me start by saying this. If you've ever dealt with a loved one's obsession, especially when it starts to impact their mental health, you know how draining and complicated it can get. And honestly, I think that's what was happening with my grandma. Her fixation on uncovering these family secrets was more than just curiosity. It was starting to look like an emotional crisis. The breaking point a few days after my grandma got that final letter from Lydia Holloway. The one where Lydia claimed she made a mistake and was backing off. Things took a pretty dark turn. My grandma, still convinced there was some grand conspiracy, started isolating herself even more. She refused to answer any questions from my mom or aunt about the truth of the past, and instead, she just kept digging into old photos, journals, and letters that she had found in the attic. The final straw came one evening when my mom went over to check on her. My grandma was sitting in the living room surrounded by stacks of papers and a wall of handwritten notes, connecting dots between family members like she was working on a case for a detective agency. When my mom tried to sit down and talk with her, my grandma snapped. She accused her of hiding the truth and protecting someone from the past. That's when my mom called me, clearly upset and frustrated, asking me to come over because my grandma was getting impossible to reason with. The intervention, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect. But I knew something had to change before things got any worse. I decided that I needed to have a serious conversation with my grandma. One that didn't involve just brushing off her theories or trying to placate her. This was deeper than that. It was about her mental and emotional health. When I arrived, my grandma was in full detective mode, making notes in a notebook and muttering to herself. She looked up when I walked in, but she didn't seem surprised to see me. In fact, she almost seemed relieved, like she'd been waiting for someone to finally understand. "Do you think they'll ever tell us?" she asked me, her voice quiet but urgent. "Do you think they'll admit it? The Holloways. They're hiding something. I can feel it." I took a deep breath. "Grandma, I know you found a lot of things, and I know it's exciting. But this obsession with finding the truth, it's hurting you. You're pushing people away, and it's making you unhappy." She blinked at me, her eyes narrowing. "But I'm not unhappy, she said, almost defensively. "This is important. It's family. Don't you want to know who we really are?" "I do want to know," I said gently, "but I don't want to lose you in the process. You've been so focused on this mystery that you're not seeing the damage it's doing to you and to us." I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she started to close herself off, but I kept going. "Grandma, I know you're trying to piece together something big, but what if there's no huge secret? What if this is all just a misunderstanding or something that happened a long time ago, and no one's even thought about it in decades? What if it's not as dramatic as you think?" For a moment, there was silence. I could see her thinking, her mind racing through all the facts she had gathered. Then, slowly, her posture softened. Maybe I've gone too far, she admitted quietly. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to find out where we came from. I thought if I found that, everything would make sense. The resolution, it took a few more conversations, but after that evening, my grandma finally began to back off. We talked about her feelings of isolation and how her obsession with the family secret was becoming a way to avoid dealing with her own fierce fears of aging, of losing touch with people, and of feeling like she'd missed out on things in life. She'd always been a quiet, reserved person, but in this quest for family history, she found a way to feel important. It was a way to connect to something bigger than herself. And when the truth seemed out of reach, she'd hold onto the mystery instead. We also had a family meeting to address everything. My aunt, Mom, and I sat down with my grandma and talked openly about the Holloway mystery. We reassured her that no one was hiding anything from her. Yes, there had been some difficult parts of the family's history, stories of estrangement, secrets, and mistakes, but none of it was intentionally kept from her. It was just that, in the years that passed, the details had been lost or faded away. We agreed that we would look through old family records together, but we would do it as a family, not as a solo investigation. The most important part of that meeting was when my mom said, "Grandma, we love you. We don't need secrets or drama to be a family. We just need each other." That's when my grandma broke down. It was like all the tension she'd been holding inside just melted away. She apologized to everyone and promised to stop looking for ghosts in the past. We hugged her, and for the first time in months, I felt like we were a family again. What's next? Things have been much calmer since then. My grandma hasn't mentioned the Holloways in weeks, and she's been focusing more on her knitting and gardening, her other hobbies, rather than scouring through old documents. I've also noticed her spending more time with the family, having dinner together, watching movies, and talking about her younger years. She's even started volunteering at a local community center, which I think has helped her connect with people in a more positive way. As for the family mystery, we'll never know if there was truly something dark in our history. But after everything that happened, I think we're better off not knowing. Sometimes the things that we feel compelled to uncover only end up hurting us. I'm just glad my grandma's back to being herself again and that the family is healing. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and support during this crazy time. I'm so grateful for all of you. The end. Thanks for following the saga. And I hope this can be a reminder that sometimes the best family secrets are the ones left undisturbed.